Big announcement, giant announcement, huge announcement from Donald Trump about the battle over the Speaker of the House. Does this end the debate? We'll discuss it in just a moment. Also, Scott Jennings at it again, this time speaking truth to, well, dipshits over there at CNN. Yes, speaking truth to dipshits. That's what I said over Biden's legacy. They're already trying to rewrite his legacy, but Jennings brings it home. Get this, Joe Biden actually thinks he should have stayed in the race and he would have beaten Donald Trump. It's amazing. And we'll talk about that. Plus, Tom Homan getting real about what's about to happen with our border and with about deportations. Great stuff right now. We're brought to you by Birch Gold. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Watching our live stream right now, one of the last shows of 2024. That's wild, man. It's New Year's week, and we're all excited about it because just 3 weeks from today, in fact, 3 weeks from this moment, if you're watching us live, Donald Trump will officially be our president, and we're ramping up for Inauguration Day. Cannot wait, and we've got a lot to discuss. So thanks for watching the live stream. Thanks for liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It means the world to us. Increased tariffs on our trade partners, that's being discussed right now. Tax cuts, hopefully we can keep them. Regulation changes. Learn why gold is a viable diversification tactic now more than ever, because all those news stories I just told you about, it's affecting your savings, it's affecting your investments and your retirement, and gold is a great way to diversify. Birch Gold, the only gold company I endorse, they're releasing their ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. And it is got a forward by Donald Trump Jr. You can get a free copy just because you know me, along with Birch Gold's free information kit on gold. All you got to do is text my name, Larry, Larry, to 989898. The facts are the national debt continues to increase. Our interest payments on the national debt continue to increase. Gold is still your hedge against a weakened dollar. Birch Gold, still the company I recommend to help you convert an existing IRA or 401k to a tax-sheltered IRA in gold, not one penny out of your pocket. So just text Larry, Larry, to 989898. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era. There's no obligation, just good information. Once again, that's my name, Larry, to 989898. Get your free copy of the ultimate guide for gold in the Trump era from my friends at Birch Gold. All right, just moments ago, Donald Trump put out a very long message on Truth Social. It's been reposted on X, the everything platform, and we should read into it here because it's a big, long statement, and it ends with a full-throated, unequivocal endorsement for Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House. That's right, you heard me, Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. Here's the message from real Donald Trump. We are the party of common sense. A primary reason that we won in a landslide the magnificent and historic presidential election of 2024. All 7 swing states, 312 electoral college votes, and the popular vote by millions of voters, despite large-scale voter fraud taking place in numerous states, including California, where votes are ridiculously still being counted or under review. All won with ease, calm, and professionalism. Republicans are being praised for having run a legendary campaign. Democrats are being excoriated for their effort, having wasted $2.5 billion, much of it unaccounted for, with some being used to illegally buy endorsements. $11 million to Beyonce, who never sang a song. $2 million to Oprah for doing next to nothing, and even $500,000 to Reverend Al, a professional con man and instigator who agreed to interview their star-spangled candidates, Kamala and Joe. I just want you to know that I swear to God, this is in fact an endorsement for Speaker Mike Johnson. He's just got a lot to say before the endorsement. He has to set it up, all right? There's a lot he's got to get off his chest to set the stage for the endorsement, so stick with me on this. We ran a flawless campaign, Trump continues, having spent far less with lots of money left over. They ran a very expensive sinking ship, embracing DOJ and FBI weaponization against their political opponent, me. But it didn't work. It was a disaster. Let's not blow this great opportunity, which we've been given. The American people need immediate relief from all of the destructive policies of the last administration. Speaker Mike Johnson is a good, hard-working, religious man. He will do the right thing, and we will continue to win. Mike has my complete and total endorsement. MAGA. Now, that's the statement. And I think that the framing of the message is, in fact, important, if not incredibly entertaining, because, well, Trump is Trump. The framing is important because he laid out how we've won. We won against all odds. We won against a corrupt and well-funded machine who made mistakes and are being excoriated. Meanwhile, we're being praised. Why screw this up? We look competent. We look effective. We look like winners. Why next week do we want to enter into what can only be described as a loser scenario? Why would we want to screw up this great and momentous and resounding victory with a squabble over the gavel in the House of Representatives, especially since not one person, you understand, Trump has stayed silent for the last week plus since the fight over the continuing resolution, right? He has stayed silent. He has not said anything about Mike Johnson. Why? Well, you can read into it however you'd like, but frankly, knowing Trump, I think he was waiting to see if somebody was going to emerge, if somebody was going to step up, if somebody was going to take this opportunity and say, yeah, you know what, I should be speaker. But we heard nothing. We heard nothing from nobody. So what do we want to do? Start the end of this week, next week, with this new Congress swearing everybody in, and then you have this fight where you can't reach an agreement on who the speaker should be. Trump would look bad. The Republican Party would look bad. We'd look like we can't lead. The people just gave us this victory, and now we can't move forward. Now, I'm not saying this is what I think. I'm telling you, this is what I read into what Trump is doing here. He waited. No one emerges. Enough is enough. It's almost New Year's. The Congress is going to convene. First order of business is picking the speaker. No one stepping forward. Then let's just stick with the plan. Let's go forward. Most important part of this, I think, Speaker Mike Johnson is a good, hardworking, religious man. He'll do the right thing, and we will continue to win. Also, the American people need immediate relief from all the destructive policies of the last administration. In other words, we can't waste time on this other stuff, whether it's because of ego or vengeance, retribution, whatever it is. We need immediate efforts. We need to win now. So let's move forward. That's what Trump's conveying here. That's the message he's sending. I also, even though I kind of made fun of it, I think that it's telling that he had a lot to say about his victory. He had a lot to say about defeating the Democrats. He had a lot to say with how the last 6 months have gone, especially against all the odds, all the money, all the celebrity endorsements, and even the Justice Department and the FBI weaponizing against him. We won all of that. So now why do we want to inflict a wound on ourselves? Let's talk about all that first. Then at the end, I'll say, let's keep Johnson as the Speaker of the House. I think that that's telling, because the bigger issue is not who is the Speaker of the House. The bigger issue is the victory that we just enjoyed and not getting in the way of our own good news cycle. And I think that's what Trump is conveying, not just with this endorsement, but the way he communicated this endorsement. Now, there's been lots of commentary, as you can well imagine, over the last 60 minutes about this. Let's start with Speaker Johnson himself, who understandably was very grateful for the endorsement. Thank you, President Trump, he says. I'm honored and humbled by your support, as always. Together, we will quickly deliver on your America First agenda and usher in the new golden age of America. The American people demand and deserve that we waste no time. Let's get to work. Now, interesting that Trump said that the American people deserve immediate relief. Now, you know, Trump doesn't become president until January 20th, of course, as I said, 3 weeks from today. But when Congress convenes and after they choose their leadership officially, they can get to work immediately on bills. They can draft legislation. They can get things in the hopper. They can get things voted on. They can have bills waiting for Donald Trump sitting on his desk at 1600 Pennsylvania. He returns from being sworn in. He walks that mile. He'll drive part of it up Pennsylvania Avenue to his new house, which is his old house for 4 years. Get right to work, and he can sign bills into law on day one. You know, a lot of times you see executive actions on day one. Well, why not get bills signed into law? You've got 20 days now, or 2 weeks at least, for the House of Representatives to get this going. Also, the Senate's going to be involved in the confirmation process for the cabinet. But you're signaling here, right? Together, we will quickly deliver. You see those words on your America First agenda. Obviously, this was the conversation. You know that Mike Johnson had a conversation with President Trump. President Trump said, all right, listen, Mike, I'll go ahead and put my endorsement, but I've been down this path before. I've been down this path and it didn't work out well for me because the last guy I gave full unequivocal support to when I was about to be inaugurated for president, well, it didn't quite go to plan. Yeah, let's not forget. Paul Ryan became speaker with Trump's support and endorsement, and then immediately sat on his hands on the border protection, sat on his hands on the border wall, sat on his hands on a lot of the aspects of the Trump agenda until he got his tax cuts through, until he got, other than, listen, I'm not saying the tax cuts weren't good, but the priority for Trump in 2016 was fix immigration, secure the border, build the wall, let's go. And instead, Ryan said, nah, hold off on that. Let's do this first. Tax cuts are more important. I think that undermined Trump's power and influence in town bigly. This time around, Trump is saying, listen, pal, I'll do this for you, but we're going to do things my way. It's my agenda. You need to move quickly because I just won the presidency. You wouldn't be speaker right now. Thune wouldn't be majority leader right now if I hadn't won so overwhelmingly. And Johnson said, you bet, let's go. Let's go. And that's what's moving along. All right, Matt Gaetz has an opinion on this. I know you may be thinking, well, Matt Gaetz isn't even in Congress anymore. And he's not what it is. Well, Matt Gaetz, I think it's fair to say, probably has a good working knowledge of the interpolitical drama of the Speaker of the House fights. Let's face it. He was a big part of ousting Kevin McCarthy midterm last time around. And because of that, by the way, he made a lot of enemies in the Republican caucus, but he knows a lot about what's going on behind the scenes because he was one of those guys behind the scenes. Here's Gaetz's take on this. Trump endorsing Johnson is art of the deal level practicality. We could never have held up McCarthy 2 years ago if concessions if a Trump certification hung in the balance. Let me pause there for a minute. No, it does, he says. You see, you'll remember that 2 years ago when McCarthy, after the midterms of 2022, won the speakership, he had to negotiate and wrangle, and there was a lot of arm twisting for him to be Speaker of the House. Matt Gaetz was one of the people, along with other people in the Freedom Caucus, who said, okay, yeah, we'll vote for you, but we don't trust you entirely on budget issues, on spending issues. You're going to go into a back room. You're going to make a deal. So if you want our endorsement, here are some of the things that we demand. And that ended up being a protracted experience. It took many days, if not a couple of weeks, until finally they had the vote and Kevin McCarthy had secured enough Republicans to be Speaker of the House. The difference this time around is on January 6th, you need to have a Speaker of the House to affirm the Electoral College so that Trump can be president. So you don't have time like you did in 2022 in the midterms. Republicans have to move, and they have to move now. And that's what Matt Gaetz said. We couldn't have held up McCarthy 2 years ago for concessions, the concessions that we got. All right, he goes on. We were able to hold up McCarthy because Republican voters weren't all that eager to see us getting back to being Biden's bitch, which Kevin ultimately did anyway. It's Matt Gaetz talking. The resistance to Speaker Johnson is now futile. Let's work to make him the best version of himself, which was more like the 2023 vintage of Mike. All right, so that's Matt Gaetz chiming in as well, and noteworthy, I think, considering he knows a lot of the drama here, and probably politically is aligned with most of the people who are skeptical in the House of Representatives right now about Mike Johnson's ability to lead going forward, and they may be a little, wounded based on his first attempt at this continuing resolution a couple of weeks ago in working with Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, a major mistake, obviously, at the time. All right, finally, Terry Schilling, of course, from what's his group called?
American Principles Project.
Thank you, Kevin. American Principles Project, a good cultural, social conservative. Can't accuse him of being anything short of MAGA. He replied on this with some notes, I think, that are worthy of observation when it comes to Speaker Johnson. Mike Johnson is probably one of the most difficult jobs of any speaker in U.S. history. True, he's got, a 2-seat majority right now, 3-seat majority. He has managed to get several key wins and votes on issues important to the American family, including defunding sex changes for kids in the NDAA. He has my full support. Yeah, see, people forget about that. Listen, I understand that a lot of people are angry at some of the less fully conservative decisions that Mike Johnson has made as speaker, including some Ukraine funding things. You know, he's decided to pick the fights that he can pick and fight the fights that he can win when he can pick them and fight them, and then decide to relinquish on fights that he can't win. And you can judge that. It's your ability to judge it, your right to judge it. But he did hold the line on some things that I think most conservatives should be happy with, as Terry Schilling just said, with that as well. All right. Now, is this enough to put this to bed? Is it enough to have Tom Massey or Chip Roy or some of the other Republicans who have expressed their reluctance to move forward with Mike Johnson as Speaker? Is Donald Trump's endorsement enough to keep them aside? Maybe just vote present. Maybe don't vote at all. I don't know. I don't know. I really don't know. Let's see what happens. But I want to say, if you're Speaker Johnson right now and you want to retain the gavel and you want to move forward with the Republican majority and get to work, you would rather have that endorsement from Trump than not have that endorsement from Trump. So this is a huge win for Johnson. And clearly, Trump has worked this out. This is where he wants to go. So now this is now no longer a test of Mike Johnson's ability. This is now a test of Republicans in the House's loyalty to their new president and whether they will follow through on this. And that will be a drama we're all going to be watching. Sometimes you see a story out there and you just have to look twice at it. You have to say, wait a second, that's got to be Babylon Bee. Hold on. Is the Onion now getting good again? Hold on. This can't be real. And I assure you, this is real. New York Post, Biden regrets leaving race, thinks he could have beaten Trump. Yes! Guys, I told you this was going to happen. I told you after the whole Kamala coup and they push him aside, I told you this is win-win for Biden. Kamala wins the presidency. Biden can say, see, I've been vindicated. My presidency has been revalidated by the American people and my hand-chosen successor, even somebody as asinine and imbecilic as Kamala Harris, can win the presidency because she's my gal and I picked her and she's going to continue my legacy. So I'm the winner. But if Kamala Harris loses to Donald Trump, then Joe Biden come January, and here it is 2 days earlier than I expected. Joe Biden come January can say, well, you know, I would have won. They should have never pushed me out. There's only one man in America who's ever beaten Donald Trump in an election, and it's this guy, Joe Biden would say. He's going to write a book. The title of the book, I Would Have Beat Him. The book tour is going to be glorious. He's already beginning it right here. He's gonna destroy them all. He doesn't care about loyalty. He doesn't care about these Democrats. He doesn't care about any of them. He cares about one guy, the big guy. It's beautiful. I love it. Let them fight amongst themselves to the death. It's glorious. He's also delusional. He couldn't beat Trump in the presidential race. He couldn't beat Nixon in a presidential race. And I'm not talking about Nixon back during Watergate. I'm talking about Nixon now, like dead Nixon, like Richard Nixon 20 years after his death. And Biden would still lose. Are you kidding me? But now this is what we're going to engage in. This week, at the end of the year, everyone's going to be looking back and reevaluating what happened in 2024, but also because this is the end of the Biden presidency, there's going to be a whole lot of circumspection. So what is Joe Biden's legacy after all? And so Biden's trying to get out in front of that and say, yeah, I would have beaten him. I should have never dropped out of the race. As if it was his idea in the first place. As if he actually voluntarily dropped out. Give me a break. That said, as I mentioned, the circumspection and the look back and the reflection by all of our media elites has already begun. And I want to tell you, this is my favorite clip of the day, which we're about to watch together for a couple of reasons. This is a panel of political and White House correspondents for CBS News, led by Major Garrett yesterday on Face the Nation. And they engage in the conversation, what was the most underreported story of the year? Now, again, as I begin this clip, I want to remind you, these are paid, elite, professional journalists, and their entire job is to cover American politics and the presidency for CBS News. Now watch how the conversation ensues.
One of the things we also do in the year-end correspondence roundtable is dig into what was undercovered or underreported. Jan?
Undercovered, underreported. That would be, to me, Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline that became undeniable in the televised debate.
At the presidential debate with Donald Trump.
Unquestioned. And, you know, it's starting to emerge now that his advisors kind of managed his limitations. It's been reported in the Wall Street Journal for 4 years. And yet he insisted that he could still run for president. We should have much more forcefully questioned whether he was fit for office for another 4 years, which could have led to a primary for the Democrats. It could have changed the scope of the entire election. Yet still, incredibly.
All right. I'm going to let you finish, ma'am, but this needs to be commented on just a little bit before she continues. So she says that the most underreported, undercovered story of the last year was Joe Biden's obvious cognitive decline. Funny, you're right. It was obvious. And actually over right here on this screen, this one right here, on this show, on this channel at Town Hall Media, we covered it a lot, ma'am. And not just me and this voice for Town Hall, across all of our websites, Town Hall, Red State, PJ Media, Hot Air, Twitch. We were talking about it. By the way, not just us at Town Hall. I'm thinking pretty much every right of center website, publication, streaming channel, broadcast news channel, cable. Well, there are no right of center broadcast news channel, cable news channels. We were all over that story, ma'am. It wasn't underreported. It wasn't undercovered. But you're right, it was obvious. In fact, when we did cover it, you all called us liars. You all said we were engaging in cheap fakes. You said that there was misinformation. You said that there's no actual evidence that Joe Biden is suffering from any mental, physical, or cognitive decline. That's what you said. That's what your colleagues said. All right, so that's number one. Number two, I want to remind you that she's sitting here navel-gazing, saying, oh, yeah, we really missed that story, when that is literally their job. It's their only job. Imagine being a political reporter and admitting after the fact that you missed the only significant, important story of the year, which is the president of the United States is incapable of being president of the United States. It's like being a sports reporter and saying, yeah, you know, that whole football season, we totally missed it. Who knew that they were playing football in this country? Number three, did you catch at the very end there? She said, we should have been more aggressive on this story because it could have forced a primary process, which would have changed how the election went. In other words, the reason she's finally circumspect about her role as a political reporter in Washington, D.C. in 2024 and ignoring and choosing, frankly, to cover up rather than cover the decline of the president's physical, mental, and cognitive abilities. The reason she regrets it is if they had been on the story earlier and actually told the truth instead of covering for Joe Biden, then they would have had a primary process and maybe they would have had a better candidate who would have beaten Donald Trump. See, the real regret here is that Donald Trump won, maybe because they didn't push Biden out soon enough. They are so corrupt. They are so awful. Even when they're acting like they're admitting they got something wrong, they're actually revealing what their true intentions are. But this isn't even the best part of the clip. In a moment here, you're going to see a guy chime in. His name is Robert Costa, White House correspondent for CBS News. I think he still has a byline at Washington Post as well. Now, I just want you to know that Robert Costa, to many of us here in Washington, D.C., we used to call him Bob. I think he goes by Robert now for a couple of reasons. The first is he doesn't want to be confused with Bob Costas, the obnoxious, horribly insufferable sports guy from NBC News, because the names sound alike. Bob Costa, Bob Costas, right? But he also goes by Robert now because he's a very serious journalist. See, back when we all knew him as Bob, he was a reporter covering politics, but not for CBS News, not for Washington Post. No, he covered it for National Review. National Review, of course, is a conservative news site. And when Bob Costa was working for National Review, he was, well, there's no other word for it, conservative. But now he works for Washington Post. Now he works for CBS News. And now he's Robert. And just wait till you hear what Robert brings to the table here in discussing the biggest underreported, overlooked story of the year, Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Take it away, Bob.
We read in the Washington Post that his advisors are saying that he regrets that he dropped out of the race. You know, that he thinks he could have beaten Trump. And I think that is either delusional or they're gaslighting.
President Biden has said repeatedly he was sick during the debate June 27th in Atlanta, and he's always been fine, and he leaves fine. That is his position, the position of many of his top aides as well, even though there is that reporting.
Robert Costa.
That's just glorious. That is chef's kiss. That we got to watch it one more time.
As said repeatedly, he was sick during the debate June 27th in Atlanta, and he's always been fine, and he leaves fine.
Joe Biden has said repeatedly that he was sick that night at the debate, and he's always been fine, and he leaves office fine. Look at his face. Look at the arched eyebrow. Well, there you have it. There you have it. Thank God, Robert Costa to the rescue here. Sort of setting the record straight on everything. Hey, you're saying this was an underreported story, but let's just remember, everybody, Joe Biden says he's fine. And that should be the end of it. No more questions asked, because we're reporters after all. This is journalism now. I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that face. I want you to remember Robert Costa and the entire panel there at CBS News Face the Nation, because there's discussion now about the President of the United States. And Robert Costa just said, hey, Joe Biden says he's fine. He said he was sick that night. He's always been fine, and he's leaving office fine. And that apparently is supposed to be the end of the story. So over the course of the next 4 years, there's going to be a lot of things said in Washington, D.C. about President Trump. And President Trump is then going to make a statement, and he's going to say that what's being reported is false, and the truth is whatever Donald Trump says it is. And I want to know if Robert Costa is going to use the Biden standard on that. Hey, everybody, stop saying that about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has said this. And so there you have it. Do you think that's how they're going to cover the Trump presidency? Do you? So everybody, we're back to where we were in June, right before the debate. Don't believe your lying eyes. Don't believe what you see. Don't believe what's clear on video. Don't believe what you're hearing, where he mangles every other word and can't put a sentence together and can barely walk. And they have to put him up the little baby stairs to Air Force One. And they got to have handlers help him walk across the South Lawn from Marine One into the White House. Don't believe any of that, because Biden says he's okay. And that's good enough for me. That's good enough for Robert Costa of CBS News. Wow. Meanwhile, over on CNN, Abby Phillips was having another one of these panels, a roundtable, to discuss the Biden legacy. And the issue was raised about Biden's, well, there's no other word for it, corruption, about his ties to his son, Hunter Biden, who he just gave a 10-year unequivocal, across-the-board pardon to for whatever crimes that he may have committed over that time while Biden was vice president and while Biden was president. And it was revealed during this panel that Abby Phillips, that woman you see right there, the host of this show on CNN, has not actually been following the news. This news host, this journalist, this teleprompter reader has no idea about one of the most important stories of the last 4, 5, 10 years, Hunter Biden and the Biden family's corruption. Behold the beauty of this moment.
I'm still waiting.
Speculative?
After 4 years of Donald Trump.
Did money not
and
change hands?
Scott,
Did it not?
4 years of Donald Trump, 4 years of a Joe Biden DOJ looking into these very things. I'm still waiting to see.
Well, he can't be charged. He's the president.
Right? I'm
Joe
still
Biden
waiting.
can't be charged.
I'm not talking about charges. I'm still waiting to see the proof of Joe Biden enriching himself. I take his brother and his son, perhaps.
I'll give you.
All right, so this is about to get glorious, but I just want to remind you, if you're a frequent viewer of this show, you know the answer to this already, and that is federal corruption statutes do not require that you personally enrich yourself through your actions as an elected official to be guilty of corruption and bribery and influence peddling. Okay, I'll give you the analogy that I love to give. If a father and son, let's call them Schmo and Slunter, okay? Schmo and Slunter, father and son, criminal teen. They go to rob a bank, and Slunter, the son, he gets off with all the money, and Schmo doesn't keep one penny. Well, guess what? The dad is just as guilty of robbing that bank, even though he didn't get any of the money. So here's Abby Phillips, completely ignorant of the law in question here, saying, listen, there's no evidence that Joe enriched himself. It doesn't matter. If Joe can enrich his brother or his son or some stranger through his illegal, corrupt acts, he's still guilty of, say it with me, illegal and corrupt acts. That said, of course, there is evidence that Joe has enriched himself, and Abby Phillips is about to be educated in that regard, and then watch what she does. Watch what she does. It's like, we're done. We're done here. We're done.
That is, I think that is yet to materialize. Otherwise,
I'll give you the
your
direct
colleague, James Comer, could have produced the evidence, and he didn't.
He did. A Chinese company transferred money to a shell company owned by Hunter and Jim Biden that then transferred money directly to Jim and Sarah Biden's shell company that then transferred the money to Jim and Sarah's personal account, who then immediately wrote a check for $40,000 to Joe Biden. So to say that there was no evidence, to say there was no evidence is not true. It's not true.
What I'm saying is that Trump was president for 4 years. He wanted to charge Joe Biden. Why did the charges not come? And I think that still remains an open question. If there is something illegal happening here, there should be charges on the basis of what you're saying, and there have not been.
Well, he just pardoned Hunter
that is
for an 11-year time period.
An
11-year time period.
He just wiped the slate.
Hang on, guys.
Jim will be next, by the way.
We're waiting for the charges, and when the charges come, we'll have a conversation about that. I promise you that. Solomon Jones, thank you very much for joining.
There you go. We're done with this segment. We're going to go right to commercial. Really interesting there. There are no charges. When the charges come, then we'll talk about it. But if there are no charges, then clearly nothing went wrong. Again, I ask you to remember this moment when it comes to the Trump standard. How many times has that network called Donald Trump an insurrectionist or inspiring an insurrection or agitating for and inciting an insurrection? And yet, even though 1,000 people have been charged for the events of January 6th, you know as well as I do how many of them have been charged with insurrection. Say it with me. 0. Not one person has ever been charged with insurrection against the United States of America as it relates to the events of January 6th. But I'm pretty sure they've told us that Donald Trump led an insurrection, incited an insurrection, is guilty of insurrection. So there's the CNN Abby Phillips standard. If there are no charges, then we can't talk about it. It didn't happen, everybody. By the way, one other thing. She said James Comer in the House of Representatives, the chairman of the Oversight Committee, well, he would have brought charges if he had evidence. The House of Representatives don't bring criminal charges against people, Abby. And he did, in fact, lay out everything you just heard and a whole lot more in his report after their hearings about the corruption. And by the way, they also began impeachment proceedings because of all of that. And you saw her face start to melt as he said, okay, well, this Chinese company paid this shell company this much money. And then that shell company paid this shell company that much money. And then that shell company wired money into the personal accounts of Jim Biden. And then Jim Biden wrote a check to Joe Biden, which he then cashed and put in his account. And Abby Phillips is like, oh gosh, it's such a conspiracy theory because A to B to B to C. And you've got all the, okay, here's the thing. That's why they call them shell companies. That's why they have like 30 shell corporations. They call them shell corporations because they play the shell game where they hide the money and they move it from one shell to the other. And it's the whole point. That's what criminal enterprises do. And if you can't keep up, you probably shouldn't have a job at CNN. Or maybe that's exactly why CNN hired you in the first place. Which moves us back to Scott Jennings, who was listening to his colleagues talk about the glowing, wonderful Biden legacy. And it took Scott Jennings to, well, as I said before, speak truth to dipshits. And here he is.
But Joe Biden's record with regard to the things that he's accomplished, I think will stand the test of time. Now, what my dear friend Scott and others will talk about, and quite frankly, I'm going to say this on it, rightfully so. It was very disturbing to learn late in the year about just how how poor his health has become. And like many, I did not realize that it had gotten to that point. That being said, I think he's still, look, he showed up for the job. He got the work done. I think some of the accomplishments also in the Middle East and foreign policy will also stand the test of time.
You think the Middle East is in better shape today than when he took office?
Well, I think he got our hostages home. I think that's a big deal. I think it's important.
I'm sorry, which hostages?
He's gotten a number of people home. He was able.
There's still 100 people over there,
Well, there were more than
including some Americans. Look, I think he's gonna leave office in disgrace. The Hunter Biden pardon was disgraceful. He's going to be remembered largely for inflation and for the disastrous Afghanistan pullout. And I think as we continue to, we're just getting the first draft of this now, but as we continue to learn about the massive cover-up that went on, not about his health, but about his mental acuity, to cover that up, the efforts that were undertaken by the White House staff, by his family, not in the last couple of months, but for all 4 years, I think it's going to be a really ugly chapter. It's a diminished presidency because of it. And I think we still don't know the full extent of what they did to try to hide what they've been doing over in the West Wing.
So I think leaving in disgrace is when you have an insurrection at the Capitol. Like, that's leaving in disgrace. Being impeached twice is leaving in disgrace. So that's a difference. I think Joe Biden's going to be remembered in the short term for what you were talking about, whether or not he had the capacity to lead, who knew what when. I mean, there are many people outside of the very small network of Anita Dunn and Valerie Biden Owens and Jill Biden and Hunter. There aren't many people who knew the concerns that were there or whether or not he was up or fit for the job. And so those questions will be asked. Over the long term, this is somebody a lot like Mitch McConnell. You don't necessarily have to agree with everything they stood for. You don't have to agree with every vote, but you always knew they put the American people first.
Okay. It's funny how they're all saying that about Mitch McConnell now that he's gone. You know, they always have glowing things to say about Republicans when they're no longer in office or no longer holding any political power. And if they've defeated them, and also if they come through and saying mean things about Donald Trump or any Republican that's currently holding office or in power. But let's just remember that. Again, Scott Jennings, fantastic, leaving in disgrace. It is a disgrace. This entire presidency has been a disgrace. And then, of course, CNN is once again, as I told you, able to say, oh, but he didn't lead an insurrection. He didn't get impeached twice. He didn't get, that's a disgrace. That's a disgrace. Funny thing about that, because just a handful of years after these so-called disgraceful moments of 2 impeachments and an insurrection, the American people had the opportunity to agree with that dork on CNN. And, well, they didn't, did they? You see, Donald Trump came forward to the American people on Election Day and said, they say I led an insurrection. You saw for yourself what happened on January 6th and why it happened and what they did in the hearings and all of that. You see for yourself why they brought impeachment charges against me. You see for yourself what was behind the Mar-a-Lago raid. You see for yourself the Stormy Daniels thing and the E. Jean Carroll thing. You see for yourself what's going on in Atlanta, Georgia, and Fulton County with Fani Willis and her boyfriend. You see for yourself with Jack Smith and the attempts to keep me off of the ballot. I trust the American people to decide this. You've seen for yourself. If you think I'm an insurrectionist, if you think I'm a disgrace because I got impeached twice, then vote for Kamala Harris. Please go ahead. But if you think it's all bullshit, if you actually think that I should be president again, please vote for me. I leave it in your hands. And he won every single swing state. He won 312 electoral college votes. He won the popular vote. He won across the board. Nearly every single county in America moved to the right and moved to the Republican Party from the last election. And it's not just because Kamala Harris was a disaster. So you go ahead, CNN, you dead enders. You keep holding the torch. You keep the flame lit for your insurrectionist impeachment rhetoric, because it's really worked well so far. But I assure you, it's not a disgrace when you win a landslide victory and you're just 3 weeks away from being sworn in as president of the United States. Joe Biden. He did the same thing. He took it to the American people, and he couldn't even make it to Election Day. And his hand-picked successor, she got demolished. So who's the real disgrace here, really? We are 3 weeks away from Inauguration Day, and that means we're 3 weeks away from a brand new border czar. His name is Tom Homan. He's promised to do some very simple things: resecure the border and then deport criminals in this country who have no business being here because they were let in under Joe Biden's regime of open borders. Come as you are, no vetting. Oh, I'm sorry, you've got a record of murder and rape and child molestation. That's fine. Why don't you just go to New York? Tom Homan is ready to begin that process. And here he was on Newsmax talking about it and confronting some criticism from, well, some rather uninformed Democrats in the House of Representatives.
Of Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crocker talking about your capabilities on MSNBC this weekend.
Again, we have someone who doesn't know what he's doing. And, you know, this idea of, oh, you know, you're illegal and then you go out and have a child. It's not quite that simple, especially when you have people that are doing things like seeking asylum and people that are saying, listen, I'm just trying to make sure that I can live a better life. And you have, you know, Trump that goes out there, him and his minions, and they say things like, you know what, we're only going to get rid of the bad ones, right? And so people sit there and they're like, wait a minute, you're going to come to my job where I'm working and I may be paying into taxes or whatever, or my kids are at school. You know, I think that there's going to be a rude awakening really on all sides.
Doesn't know what he's doing. Tom, just to go through some of your background, a Border Patrol agent, an investigator, a special agent, supervisor, special agent, assistant director of investigations. I mean, the list goes on and on. You are so beyond qualified. What's your response to that?
Well, look, I forgot more about this issue than she'll ever know. I mean, for God's sakes, I've been doing it for 34 years. But look, there has been a rude awakening. That rude awakening was in November at the election. There was a rude awakening that American people are sick of an open border. American people are sick of illegal alien crime in this country. I mean, how many young women had to be raped and murdered and burned alive? How many MS-13 and Trinidad Guaya had to be in our major cities committing crimes against U.S. citizens? How many angel moms and dads do we have to have in this country that lost their children at the hands of someone that wasn't supposed to be here, and they're buried their children? You want to talk about family separation? And as far as family detention, all of a sudden the discussion goes from family detention to family separation. Family detention is the complete opposite of family separation. So look, I don't know who this lady is, but apparently she's not real smart. But as you can say what you want. Look, I made this clear. I don't care what they say about Tom Homan. Because, you know, I've done this job for a long time. I think the president got a mandate in November. He called me to help me fix the border. And look, under the Trump administration, we have the most secure border in my lifetime. We're going to get that secure border again because secure border saves lives. And no one can argue that. Under the Biden administration, we got a historic number of aliens have died across this border, nearly 4,000. An historic number of Americans, over 250,000, died from fentanyl comes across that border. Their policies are killing Americans at record numbers. They're killing aliens at record numbers. President Trump is going to secure this border and save lives, just not of Americans, but of aliens too. A secure border saves lives. That's exactly what we're going to do starting day one.
All right, that's Tom Homan this morning on Newsmax, and it's brilliant stuff, as you can well imagine. That Jasmine Crockett, Democrat. I love that these are the people that they're trotting out to speak on behalf of the regime as the opposition. The opposition is Jasmine Crockett. Good. Can't get enough of her. Suggesting that Tom Homan doesn't know what he's doing. As Homan just said, I've forgotten more about border security than Ms. Crockett will ever know. Listen, she has the right to sit on television and pontificate because she won an election to be a member of the House of Representatives. And I guess that's all it takes, frankly. I mean, listen, I have a right to sit here and give my opinion too. We all have a right to our opinions. But let's be clear, based on what Ms. Crockett just said and what she and her party now stand for, with regard to border security and what's going on in this country, she is on the side of the rapists. She is on the side of the murderers. You just heard the stats. Over 4,000 women, children, innocent people have died on the trek across Mexico from Latin America to get to our southern border. It's not an easy trip. And by having that open border, you're enticing more people to come. Wouldn't it be safer and saner for people to claim refugee status and asylum in their own home country, which will be the policy once we reverse what Biden did? But no, Ms. Crockett is in favor of the status quo. She's in favor of what's going on right now. And that means those deaths are on her hands. She also said something there, which I think is fascinating. She said that people are coming here because they just want to have a better life. And I have no doubt that's the case. But you see, that's a bit of a tell. In fact, that would be evidence that I would bring up to the good Congresswoman to prove that their entire position and policy is contrary to law. In fact, they're supporting criminal behavior. Because, hear me now, this is really important, and please fact check this. You do not have the right to enter this country and claim asylum because you want to have a better life. That may be a hard truth for a lot of people, but it is the truth. You see, we have very specific rules with regard to asylum in this country. If you are a political refugee, because if you stay in your own country, you will be killed or jailed or persecuted for political reasons, you can claim refugee status. You can claim asylum. It doesn't mean you're going to get it, but you can claim it, and then you have a hearing. See, this is what our asylum laws were set up for. They were set up for people to be protected from authoritarian persecution in countries that would harm them, mostly for political purposes. So if you're fleeing Cuba or Venezuela, for instance, because the communist regime will persecute you, or for that matter, Vietnam, Cambodia, China, where we have utilized these refugee and asylum laws to help save people from the former Soviet Union. People would flee and come here. And yes, we would have a hearing, and then we would allow them asylum from the political persecution they would suffer if they stayed in their country. All right, you can also flee for religious persecution. This has been used in the past too. If you're living in a country, let's say a radical Islamic Sharia law type country, and you're Jewish or you're Christian, or for that matter, because things are a little dicey over there in some of those Muslim Sharia law countries, if you're not the right kind of Muslim, like the Sunnis and the Shiites, they don't like each other. And if you claim refugee status because of your religious faith, you will come to America, you will have a hearing, and we could give you asylum for that. There's only a couple of handful of legitimate asylum laws that allow you to claim refugee status here in America. One of them is not, you want a better life for yourself. Now, there's a lot of people who want a better life for themselves. And to gain access to the United States of America so they can have better life for themselves, they go through a legal process. It's called applying to be a legal resident and getting a green card and coming here legally. And then eventually, if you want to apply for citizenship, you can do that too, after you've proven yourself able to support yourself and not be a ward of the state, so that American taxpayers aren't funding you and supporting you for coming here, because that's not how it's supposed to work in this country. You want a better life for yourself. You want to work hard and make money and build a future for your family. Great. There's a legal way to do that. We encourage you to do it. In fact, coming here illegally and falsely, illegally claiming asylum and refugee status because you want a better life for yourself is not the way to do it. And the good Congresswoman from Texas just admitted that that's what's happening. You see, right now, all of those hearings that we're supposed to be having for people who claimed asylum, well, they're clogged up. We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough hearing rooms. We don't have enough courtrooms. They've been backlogged upwards to 6-7 years because everyone's been flooding across the border claiming asylum status. And under the Biden administration, they were saying, okay, come on in here. You'll see at your hearing in about 7 or 8 years. In the meantime, fend for yourself. And of course, while they're here fending for themselves, they end up working illegally and committing crimes, continuing to commit crimes because they're not supposed to be working here if they're here illegally. That's what's been fostered. And that's what Ms. Crockett just admitted to by saying that all these people coming here and claiming asylum and refugee status are here because they want a better life for themselves. Stop. Just stop. Think about it for a second. If the United States of America opened up its borders and allowed in anybody, and literally anybody from around the world into this country because they want a better life for themselves. Well, that's about 95% of the world's population. Sometimes I think that's exactly what Democrats want. Well, it ain't happening. And Tom Homan is right. The laws are there for a reason. And what we've seen right now is lawlessness. And as you can see from the Congresswoman from Texas, that lawlessness is celebrated and endorsed, but she admitted to it. And that's the key. Anytime you see somebody, whether it's on television or on your Facebook page or on YouTube, and they're saying, hey, why are you guys so anti-immigrant? These people just want to come here and get a job and have a better life. Say, great, there's a legal way to do that. But by coming here and claiming asylum, they're not only breaking the law and entering our country illegally, but they're also lying about their refugee status, which is breaking further laws. And then while they're waiting for their hearing, they're working and they're not supposed to be. So that's breaking further laws. And if they've obtained fake Social Security numbers or fake IDs so they could get that job, well, they've just broken more laws like identity theft or falsification of government documents, and on and on and on. And if they want a better life for themselves, God bless them, why don't you do it without breaking our laws? That's all we ask. What's wrong with that? 3 weeks away, 21 days, Homan's in as border czar, and on the first day, everything changes. Finally, everything changes. Just hold tight and get ready for it. All right, my friends, that's it for today. We did it. We did it, Kevin.
Woo!
And we're back in my studio. We're not on the road anymore. We're not traveling, and we're ready to go. And I'm not going to be traveling for a while, and it's fantastic. And the chat seemed very active today. Is everybody in a good mood? I can't tell. I did see somebody ask, don't I usually wear glasses? I do usually wear glasses. What do you think? In fact, leave a comment. Glasses or no glasses for Larry. Going forward, I will do whatever you say for 2025, but I want to vote. Maybe we should put it up as a vote. All right. We have any other business that we have to take care of here, Kevin? Do we have any announcements? Nothing?
Don't think so. Nope.
We're good. All right. We'll be back tomorrow, though. The last show of 2024 will be tomorrow, and we'll be here. Did you see Navy beat Oklahoma? Boy, that was good. Tomorrow, Michigan will beat Alabama. That'll be even better. Actually, not better, just as good. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. My name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.